You're awake right now. You're not dead, and you haven't gone to hell, said Rachel Maddow, former host on CNN, following the 2016 election. Ladies and gentlemen, people are angry about politics. Donald Trump had similar words following the 2024 election. Quote, "You're not going to have a country anymore," unquote. Late night host Jimmy Kimmel cried on stage following the 2024 election. Quote, "It was a terrible night for democracy, for women and children, for democracy and decency," unquote. Here, Rachel Maddow, Donald Trump, and Jimmy Kimmel made sensational claims. But they didn't make these claims in order to solve a problem. Instead, they wanted to create drama, and they achieved it by displaying shock and anger to the cameras. This is called false outrage. And even though false outrage is designed for the cameras, it influences others. Actually, it doesn't just influence them, it infects them. False outrage is a disease. And to cure this disease, we must decide that anger is not the solution to complex problems. So today, we'll start by diagnosing this disease in our culture, move on to its symptoms, and conclude with the cure. So, what's the difference between true and false outrage? True outrage wants what is right. It only cares about achieving good. False outrage wants to be seen. A perfect example of this is in George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984. In it, the communist regime mandates a daily practice known as the 2 minutes of hate. Every day, the citizens of this communist regime gather in front of their TVs and scream in pure outrage as images of their capitalist enemies flicker by on the screen. Their anger accomplishes nothing. They only perform. False outrage, just like that, is all over the internet today. The online world has about as much self-control as a nuclear explosion. As Killian McLaughlin and her colleagues point out in an article for Science magazine, quote, "Social media posts that express outrage are liked and shared more, training users to express more outrage, and ranking algorithms to amplify it," unquote. For example, Benny Johnson, a conservative podcaster, uses false outrage to attract views. And nearly all of his videos feature AI-generated images of politicians yelling or screaming. In one recent video, he featured an AI-generated image of Donald Trump in Eskimo clothing, screaming, along with Vladimir Putin. This doesn't make any sense. But Benny Johnson has 15 million followers. Unfortunately, false outrage is also spreading in the real world. As a report by the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression points out, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression points this out in a report. Quote, "This year, 68% of college students said that shouting down a speaker is at least rarely acceptable," unquote. The report noted that 68% is a record high. More students than ever before are willing to use outrage to silence conversations. Unfortunately, we see this all around us. 3 years ago, my grandparents and I went to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. When the march ended, I decided to keep my poster as a souvenir. That was a mistake. A woman saw my poster, walked over to me, and started screaming at me, telling me I never should have participated in the march. Her anger accomplished nothing. She only performed her outrage. Now that we've diagnosed false outrage in our culture, let's talk about its symptoms. False outrage causes us to have angry conversations and to believe that our anger makes us good people. As writers for The Minimalist, a blog blog that encourages simple living, put it, quote, "We've all gotten offended without asking ourselves why, and then used our fake outrage to cast judgment upon others. It helps us feel better." Unquote. We don't have to reason through our beliefs. Piers Morgan, the British host of a political show with 4 million followers, has done exactly that. In a 2017 interview, when a guest questioned his stance on gun policy, Piers responded, "How dare you?" Unquote. His guest answered, "Well, Piers, you can keep saying that, but my point still stands." But Piers didn't address his point. Again, "How dare you?" Piers repeated. Nothing Piers Morgan said advanced the debate. Instead, he used outrage to shield himself, because outrage is easier than analysis. False outrage is like hiding under the bed during a game of hide and seek. It hides you well, but it's a terrible place to be. False outrage is a terrible place to be, and it makes us feel better. As psychologist Joshua Grubbs in a 2019 study found that public figures express outrage to receive applause from their audience, in a term he calls moral grandstanding. When public figures condemn some far-off event, they receive praise for their bravery and courage. Another late-night host, Stephen Colbert, has done exactly that. After Donald Trump held a rally in Madison Square Garden in New York City, Stephen Colbert said on his show, quote, "I'm sure it was just a coincidence, but in 1939 they held a pro-Nazi rally there." Unquote. With this remark, Colbert insinuated that Donald Trump is pro-Nazi. Having created a straw man out of Trump, an evil Nazi, Colbert spared no words, swearing at Trump live on national television. But Colbert's statements make sense within a worldview that treats outrage as virtuous. Author Glenn Beck describes the human effect of false outrage in his book, Addicted to Outrage. Quote, "It deprives human beings of genuine humanity, replacing it instead with an outwardly facing caricature of a virtuous human being wrapped around a rotting corpse." Unquote. This worldview has morality backwards. False outrage replaces good deeds with outraged words. The culture embraces false outrage. Politicians and media figures. The culture embraces false outrage. Politicians and media figures promote it. They don't deserve all the blame, but their worldview does deserve the blame. Their worldview is false. Fake outrage is not a virtue. Moral grandstanding is not a good deed. This moral confusion has eroded the genuine compassion of millions and transformed it into outrage. But I wouldn't have accomplished anything if I told you to be outraged at false outrage. That would be a terrible cure to the sickness. I used to be addicted to outrage. I was angry at every news story. I debated every little detail. Thankfully, I was convicted after reading Glenn Beck's book, Addicted to Outrage. I realized what I had been doing. Colossians 3 verse 2 says, quote, "Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things." I made a pledge to stop being outraged at earthly things. Imagine if everyone stopped practicing false outrage. If we stopped being so angry all the time. And calmly discussed difficult questions, and stopped believing that our anger makes us good people. That's the world I want to live in. And that's only possible if you help build it. To take a quote from Darth Vader in Star Wars completely out of context, quote, "With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy," unquote. We've diagnosed our culture with false outrage, seen its symptoms, and discussed the cure. You won't make the world a better place by being angry. You'll make the world a better place when you focus on something higher than the next controversy. False outrage isn't worth it. Life is too beautiful to waste being angry.